Chapter 8. Chapter 8, we are graphing quadratic functions. Okay? And our normal quadratic function, or our base quadratic function, is this, is f of x equals x squared. So let's type that into Desmos. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, see how it's a horseshoe-shaped graph. This graph, it's a nice and blue. I'm going to call it. It's called a parabola. A parabola. It's this horseshoe-shaped graph. Look at the characteristics of this graph. It's starting at 0 and it's going up in both directions, positive and negative. Okay, let's see what happens if we throw a number in front of that x squared. Let's type in f of x equals 2x squared. Okay, notice this graph is actually skinnier than our base graph. Okay, it goes in a little bit. Let's type in a bigger number. Let's type in f of x equals 10x squared. Okay, again, notice it's even skinnier than those two. Right? What happens if we go less than 1? Let's go to a negative number. Let's type in f of x equals negative x squared. Okay, notice that's actually going down. Okay, that's starting at 0, and now it's going down in both directions, left and right, positive and negative. Good. Okay. What happens if we go between 0 and 1? Let's type in 0.5x squared. Okay, notice when we're between 0 and 1, our graph actually gets wider than our base graph. Okay, now let's type in one more example. Let's go f of x equals, or y equals 0.8x squared. And notice it's still wider than our base graph because we're less than 1. But we're skinnier than 0.5 because we're bigger than 0.5. Okay, let's talk about axis of symmetry. Vertex, domain, and range. So let's type in axis of symmetry, vertex, domain, and range. Okay, let's type in, let's just have our base graph, f of x equals x squared. Okay, our axis of symmetry is what splits the graph in half. So here, our axis of symmetry goes right down the middle of this graph, cuts it right in half. Okay, there's our axis of symmetry. And we write that in the form, what do they have? Axis of symmetry. How do they have it written?
Axis of symmetry, negative b over 2a.
Negative b over 2a. That's what they write. Okay, we'll just talk about the graph. It splits it right now. Okay, what's our vertex? Our vertex is our highest or lowest point of the graph. So in this case, it'd actually be the lowest point in the graph. And that's right at 0, 0. Our domain, think all x numbers. So here we have our x numbers on our graph. Which numbers is not covered by x? Well, it goes up, left, and right in both directions, okay? And that actually covers all x numbers. So it's actually negative infinity to positive infinity. It covers all numbers. Okay, our range is all of our y numbers. Our y numbers in this graph, they all go up. Okay, they start at 0 and they all go up. So our y numbers y is greater than or equal to 0. Okay, let's do another example. Let's type in f of x equals 8x squared. Okay, so we have a skinnier graph. Skinnier graph, but I want to ask, does the axis of symmetry change? No, it does not. It still splits it right on that y axis. Okay, does our vertex change? Right at 0, 0. No, that does not change. How about domain and range? Our domain is still negative infinity to infinity, and our range is still all positive y numbers, or 0. Okay, let's type in negative x squared. And how about, what's our axis of symmetry here? For negative x squared. It's still split right down that y-axis. Our vertex is still at 0, 0, right? It's the highest point. Our domain, does our domain change? I want you to ask that. It's still all positive or negative infinity and positive infinity. Okay, the only thing that changes here is our y, our range. Okay, and it's because it's all negative numbers and 0. So our range is y is less than or equal to 0. Yeah.